Hi everybody, thanks for joining us for the first LTBcoin Q&A. My name is Adam B. Levine. I'm the editor-in-chief of the LTB network and one of the hosts of the Let's Talk Bitcoin show. I don't usually do live because I like being able to edit myself, so today will be kind of fun. What we're going to talk about today, broadly speaking, is the LTBcoin project, which at its core is a community currency for people who want to create content. And specifically, it's for creating content on the LTB network. The kind of 30-second elevator version of what we're doing is you can think about this like a cryptocurrency just like Bitcoin, except instead of mining it with your computer, you mine it essentially with your creative effort or by consuming the creative efforts of other people. So in practice, this looks like you create content. Oop, I'm also hearing myself get picked up on one of the other feeds. Okay. It appears to still be playing somewhere else. Hang on a second.
Maybe if people aren't wearing headphones, they should mute themselves.
No, I think it's coming through on my side. Again, there it goes. That's it. Okay, guys, sorry about that. So anyways, the short version is that you mine it with your creative effort, whether that's creating a show for the Let's Talk Bitcoin network or running a blog for the Let's Talk Bitcoin network, because that's kind of what we're moving towards. Is right now, letstalkbitcoin.com is a website that is just about Let's Talk Bitcoin. But what the LTB network is going to be is essentially a platform for podcasts and video shows and also curated blogs where one or multiple people will run a blog and essentially help select writing, just like we select writing from people who we like and writing that we like to go onto the LTB blog. Other people will do that too. And the idea here is that the LTB coins serve kind of like a Dogecoin almost purpose of being a very plentiful, very fun token that you can do stuff with, but that doesn't have some of the drama that money does. Because money, you have to feel responsible about how you spend it, but most of the people who are using LTB coin at first are probably going to be receiving it for free from one of the ways that we're doing this. So over time it'll become worth something because it's a deflationary currency and it's limited in supply. But I think that we'll go through a period of a year or two really where there's a lot of generosity in the community, and it'll be very easy to bring someone into our community by giving them some LTB coin, because then they'll have stake in the network, and if the network succeeds, then they'll benefit too. And really, that's what I'm trying to do here. Is I'm trying to create incentive structures so that everybody gains, the audience gains and has a financial interest. The people who are creating content have a financial interest and don't have to do this stuff speculatively, like pretty much everybody has to do on the content side forever. And instead, it kind of ties our fates together and says we're more valuable, as a whole than as the sum of our parts. So that's I guess where I'm gonna shut up now. I want to introduce Matt, who has been acting as a community liaison. I have a tendency to dominate conversation, so he's actually gonna kind of lead part of this discussion. Also, we have a bunch of people on the call here. Thanks for everybody popping in. If you'd like to introduce yourselves, absolutely feel welcome. We could start with the guy with the A for his name, actively.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, cool. First time using this microphone. I run basically an anarchist webcomic, and was really joining into Let's Talk Bitcoin to see how the experiment works, as far as incentivizing people to moderate content, maybe produce some content for here as well. So I'm with less of the cryptocurrency. I am definitely interested in Bitcoin and a lot of different altcoins, but I'm here less of the news and opinion and blog thing, and more of the entertainment, fiction, webcomics, that kind of thing. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Cameron?
Cameron?
I don't know if he has a mic. We can move to John. John Barrett.
Next.
Anyways, would anybody like to introduce themselves? Because we can just move on to questions beyond that, too.
Yeah, my name is Josh. I've been in Bitcoin since $1 and love just changed my life. And we're in Berlin doing a startup project called Voltoro, and That's I believe it's still in development phase, and so not much more detail on that at the moment. But it's really exciting.
Matt?
Ruben's helped out a lot. Maybe Ruben could dive into his introduction. I know you just joined the call, Ruben. So
Yeah. Um, can you hear me?
Yes,
yes.
we can, Ruben.
Okay. So I'm Ruben. I go by Ruben Alexander on the web. I do writing and editing for Bitcoin Magazine. And I interviewed Adam about this in his other project, the Doxcoin. But I definitely like the idea of taking blogging and content making to the next level and pushing it off onto a DAC and just seeing what happens. I think it's a beautiful experiment, and the more types of content makers we can get covering all the different stories that are coming out, the better, I think. So.
Definitely. Thanks, Ruben. My name's Matt. I've been involved with LTBcoin for a few weeks now with Adam. I'm really excited about the possibilities of how generating coins outside of computational mining will benefit not only humanity, but I think the whole community in general. Yeah, and I've just been really excited about working on the LTB project, and it's just kind of, I'm trying to work with Adam now, trying to kind of capture the overall vision of where we're trying to go with this, because it seems like the deeper we dive into it, the more complex issues get. So, yeah, hopefully we can answer a lot of people's pressing questions today and go from there.
Yeah, that's really something here. Is I'd like to. It would be there's a lot of territory here that we're still trying to map out, and there are a lot of questions that still need to be answered, and there isn't really an obvious right answer to a lot of this stuff. So so questions are really helpful, and I'd kind of like to start there. Sorry, Scott, we skipped you. You can do an intro if you'd like.
Yeah, sure. Scott Robinson here from Plug and Play Tech Center. Just kind of monitoring the entire DAC space, and this was an interesting kind of solution that I'd like to follow. So just hanging out and want to learn more.
Yeah,
Don't
cool.
forget John.
And
Hey, John. Welcome back.
Mm-hmm. And,
So, go ahead.
okay, I'm Matthew Link. I'm in Columbus, Ohio. I'm just a long-time enthusiast of Bitcoin and a regular listener of Let's Talk Bitcoin ever since it went on the internet.
Hey, Adam, am I the green square? This is John.
Yeah, I think you're
Yes.
the green square, John.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, hey, this is John Barrett. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee, and I guess Lidge and I won the what was it, the Editor's Choice Award for the Let's Talk Bitcoin podcast competition a month or so ago, and so we've been doing a podcast out of East Nashville, and Lidge and I have been having the time of our life with it. I have no idea where Lidge is right now. He's got a daughter at home, so he's probably feeding Cheerios or something. But anyway, I'm just thrilled to be here and to be around all of you super intelligent people and to be working with the Let's Talk Bitcoin network. And I hope that we can continue to add some good content and bring you kind of what's going on on the ground with local Bitcoin or local companies that are accepting Bitcoin. That's really Lidge and I. That's kind of the direction we're taking right now, is just interview as many small businesses and people who are interested in accepting Bitcoins and getting into the Bitcoin community. So we're trying to educate, but really we're also trying to educate ourselves at the same time.
And I'm really happy to have you on this call, John, because you're the only representative of a podcast that is actually currently on the network right now. So this is, we've talked about, when we put together the LTB network proposal, the concept of LTBcoin was definitely something that was that I knew that we were going to do, but how we were going to do it was really not clear. And so we went into that kind of with a deal that was really temporary, and then because with all the focus shifted to LTB, it didn't really. I mean, we haven't really done much with it, hadn't had much success. So I'm really anxious to get into this and to have the LTBcoin model kind of kick in, because I feel like we brought people on and then haven't really delivered for them yet. So that is my goal here, is to try and solve that problem among other things. Great. Well, I really appreciate everybody being here. I know we have people trying to get into the call who can't get in. I'm glad we set this up as a hangout on air, even though it was more difficult, because I think that there is a lot of interest in this concept, even if you're not necessarily interested in the LTBcoin thing. Scott, as you said, the DAC thing, I mean, that's just happening. This is one of 8 different projects that I'm currently involved with that are building DACs out in various areas. And the concept of being able to take something like content creation and create a rule set and framework in which you just, like, you as an individual plug yourself into a job that you want to do at that particular moment, and then you can get paid for it because somebody needed to do that job, and since you did it at the time that it was needed, then that's a valuable thing. So that's really what I view all of these technologies as. They're ways to bootstrap new communities, because when there aren't many people participating, it's much more profitable for the few who are. So situations like that, in where there's actual value, don't really stand for too long. The market says, oh, I could make some money being over there doing that thing, and then they go over there and they do it, given enough time. So that really is the core of our experiment here, is trying to trust the free market and not be afraid to let ourselves essentially be valued by the market, as opposed to setting up things that we think are correct, but that might not be when actually put to the test. That's the difficult part. So I'd like to open it up to questions. If you've got something, let's start.
We have our first question from the YouTube channel.
Great.
And the question is, why not have the other participants mute each other using the question button? Oh, sorry. Is there any questions relevant to LTBcoin right now?
Yeah, so I've got a question.
Cameron, I think you're muted. And Matthew, why don't you start?
Okay. Well, I just said I didn't actually. Didn't realize this was about an altcoin. I thought this was going to be about Bitcoin, and LTB coin was a Let's Talk Bitcoin hangout. Not that it's not interesting, but I just heard about Let's Talk Bitcoin since this thing started here. I didn't know it existed.
Yeah.
But
so it doesn't exist yet. It's going to exist in about a month. Right now, we're going to launch the test version of it next week, and it actually isn't. So this is a point we can clarify. LTBcoin isn't a proper altcoin in the sense that it has its own blockchain and has its own miners and things like that. It's a user-created asset, one of the first ones actually, that is going to be created on top of Bitcoin using a protocol called Counterparty. One of the other projects that I'm working on, GoxCoin, as Ruben mentioned, is basically a similar thing. It's a user-created asset where there's no mining, and you just distribute it as you need to, as makes sense for that particular use case, except that one's built on Mastercoin, which is also built on top of Bitcoin. So what's happening is that these user-created assets let you have all of the advantages of the security of Bitcoin, of the usability of Bitcoin, of the blockchain of Bitcoin, but they let you create essentially arbitrary tokens. So if you wanted to create, Matthew coin, you could do that, and you'd have to convince people that it has value. But the technical challenge of it, the creating a blockchain and making sure that you have enough hashing power to make sure that the network is secure, really become secondary concerns that don't matter anymore. So what it means is that what we're doing with LTBcoin, like I mentioned at the beginning, is taking the idea of mining and saying, okay, if we don't need the security part anymore and we don't need the distributed hashing part anymore, then what do we want to incentivize? What types of activities add value to the network? And so then we distribute it basically based on that. And so right now, the ratios, like I said, this coin isn't out yet. We're still figuring out what the 5-year distribution schedule is going to be. But actually forgot what I was going to say.
It's okay.
I have a question. So why Counterparty for LTB and why Mastercoin for say GoxCoin?
Because I don't know which one is going to be the right one, and I think that it doesn't make any sense. Right now, there are like 5 different protocols that are floating around that each have their own, their own token. That if that network succeeds, will become incredibly valuable because these things are very, very poorly understood. I would argue that maybe 1% of people in Bitcoin understand what's going on with the metacoins right now, or less. So you can buy one share of each of those protocols and spend less than $100 doing it. And then you're vested in everything. And then it doesn't matter what wins because it doesn't matter to you. And so it makes it so you can look at the coins very objectively, whereas a lot of people are trying to pick sides right now and saying, oh, well, I put my money into this one, so that's the one that I want to win. And I think that's a big mistake right now. So what I'm actually doing is, like I said, I have 8 projects that I'm working on. And so far we have 2 of them on Counterparty, 1 of them on Mastercoin. I want to do 1 on NXT pretty much as soon as possible. They have some of the best software out there as far as I've seen. Their wallets are really outstanding, and it's funny. It's like looking at like a future version of what Bitcoin will be, but it's here now, and you can see it. So there isn't really a particular reason. I think Counterparty is a solid protocol. I think that they have a lot of legitimacy behind them, and I think that they don't have the problem of founders or the problem of money. They also don't have the advantage of either of those things, but they don't have the problem, and I like things that are simple.
Adam, I have a question.
Yes, John.
So how is the very first Litecoin created?
Do you mean LTBcoin?
Yeah, the very first LTBcoin. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so in the Counterparty protocol, what we are going to do, I can actually paste this in. You can look up the LTBcoin asset right now. Let me see if I can. Yeah, okay. So there it is in the chat. It's on blockscan.com, and you can search for LTBcoin. And basically, it shows you what's up over. We just have 1 share that's issued. But what we're going to do is we're going to issue new tokens on a weekly basis at the same time every week, basically. And it's on a 5-year deflationary schedule. We're still working on it, but it's pretty steeply deflationary, with most of the currency being issued in the first 3 years, which I really consider the bootstrapping period for the network. And then after that, it switches over to more of a sponsor revenue-driven model. But until that point, pretty much most of the compensation is coming from actual new LTB coins that are being introduced. But instead of going to miners who then sell them on the market, they go to content creators, or they go to the audience. And there are a variety of ways and capacities that we're going to be doing that. Did that answer your question, John?
Yeah, it did. What stops? The other day, someone suggested, "Hey, this guy who's starting the LTB coin, how do you know he's not going to mine a ton of them to start with?" And I said, "Well, number 1, it's because he's not mining anything. Number 2, I trust him and I trust your integrity. But how do you quell those fears that someone might have that Adam Beasley is going to have 20 million of them to start with somehow?"
Well, the great part about this is that if you go to that blockscan, page for LTBcoin, it has 5 tabs. One of the tabs is overview, the other tab is shareholders, and then there's dividends, updates, and contacts.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, you get to see everything that's going on. It's a totally transparent process, and the reason why I like this better than something like NXT, where they issued all of them at once, and then there's this giant money supply out there, I think that's a liability. If I had 90% of the money supply sitting in my account, even if it's like the LTB distribution account, whatever, that still is a huge amount of money, and it screws up the market cap. It does a bunch of other stuff like that. So because we're using these meta coins, we actually can every week, be like, okay, all right, here's the 5-year schedule, and then when we get to that week, we say, okay, here's as many are issued, and then basically what I want to do is I'd like to have someone create an interface where we can just put in all of the addresses of the people who are getting part of that distribution, and then just have it, create the new coins, have it dump into that, and pay to all those addresses immediately, and that's the weekly distribution.
Nice.
Yeah. There's something else about that.
Sounds great, man.
Yeah. Sorry, there's one other thing. Also, I'm talking with, I haven't reached out to him yet, but I just watched a talk that Ryan Singer, who's the former founder of Trade Hill, besides Jared Kenna, gave a talk at the Texas Bitcoin Conference about essentially multi-sig hierarchical wallets. So, and the other thing that they're offering with that is a trusted oracle service, basically. So we can say, okay, rather than have me or the editor-in-chief or whoever is doing that at the time control the issuance of LTBcoin, instead it's going according to this schedule, and we're partnered with CryptoCorp to provide the trusted oracle counterparty that says, okay, that takes any time we want to do something with that address, and says, does this comply with what the rules are for how this address should be handled? And if something happens that doesn't comply, then they say, no, you can't do that. But because it's a 3-part multi-sig address, essentially like there can be a safety, right? So there can be a third part that somebody else has, or that a whole bunch of people have. So if Crypto Corp decides to, run off with our keys, they can't spend our coins, they can't do anything without us, but they can stop us from doing it if it doesn't comply with our own internal rules. So that's what I want to do, is I'm trying to create these systems where we can offload as much of the responsibility from me as possible, because as I've said in a couple of these threads, like having the ability to create money, especially once we succeed with this and it becomes valuable, is dangerous. And I don't really have any interest in that. And frankly, it further muddies the project when it doesn't need to muddy.
Nice.
One of the questions I have is initial pricing of these coins or valuing. Is there an exchange that's being set up or something for these meta coins? And is that purely between other cryptos, or is that going to be also interfacing with the fiat legacy currency markets?
So unlike most coins, we are not going to be selling any of these. We are going to, most of the meta coins that come out are being done for fundraising purposes, basically. I kind of view this as a reverse fundraiser, though. We are essentially paying people with money before it is valuable, rather than doing it the other way around. Rather than not paying them with money that is valuable. So, I'm sorry, repeat your question. I got lost.
So I guess, if something needs to have some sort of value in someone's head to say, hey, I'm going to give you 1 coin or 10 coins or 0.5 of a coin for making a show.
Yeah.
Or
we're
whatever.
going with the Doge approach. We're going with the, it's a combination of the Doge approach and, which is to say, there are going to be like 51 million units. I'm pretty sure right now that the total number of units is going to be 51 million, distributed over 5 years. With the idea being that even though in practice it doesn't matter whether or not you're talking about something that has 5.1 million or 51 million, in reality people are more generous when they have larger numerical quantities of things. And I think the Dogecoin has done a good job of showing that that's really a thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but even Doge had an exchange to interface to, so
right.
people could
so
grasp.
that's the other part of this question, and the answer to your question is yes. We're talking with Cripsy. I've talked with gosh,
Big Vern.
Big Vern. Yeah, I spoke with him about that. He wants to talk with the counterparty devs about how hard it'll be to implement, but they're looking for coins that are differentiating. They don't, they want to list coins like this rather than listing coins like, just like some other random, clone of something that has a community of a couple hundred people. I mean, but the other thing about it is that because this is being built as a layer on top of counterparty, we'll have a decentralized exchange from minute one, and we should be able to start testing that next week. So a decentralized exchange in practice means that you can, put up an offer with Bitcoin and then get back LTB as something directly without having to register on anything or go through anything, and it's a P2P exchange.
Okay, so we have some more questions from the YouTube channel. So this is a question from one of the users. How do you distribute it amongst the content creators? How do you measure it?
Okay. So I'm working on another project right now that Kyle from CoinTalk and I have been talking about for, I don't know, the last couple of months, and that I first proposed back, I think, in August of last year when I was talking about my cryptocurrency ecosystem idea. Basically, we're working on a project called BitSplit, and Nick, who's developing the new LTB website, is also working on that and just got a prototype working. It basically lets you say, okay, here's, this address is for Adam. This has 10% that's going to go to it. This address is for Matt. It has 15% that's going to go to it. And you basically can set up arbitrary percentages and how a given payment should be split. And then it creates an address from that routes the value to all of those different addresses every time value is given to that address. So that actually is what we're going to be doing, is each show that's submitted is going to have an address that's submitted along with it that will have all the content creators who contributed built into that address. And then when we pay that one, it'll pay out to everybody, is currently the thought. Otherwise, it's going to have to be some sort of macro.
So will every channel or every show have the same value added in that distribution model, or will it depend basically on how many views that show is pulling into the network? Or
we haven't talked about the metrics for incentivized stuff yet. Right now, there are 2 models for content creators. Actually, let me back up real quick. First thing, Right now, I think we're only actually going to, the LTB network is only going to do distributions of the currency to shows and blogs. So that means that if you write an article, you're not actually going to get paid by me. If you write an article and the article gets picked up on the LTB blog, you'll get paid by the person who, in LTBcoin, by the person who's running the LTBcoin blog and who decided that your piece was a good one to run. And the way that that'll happen is, first off, they will, essentially there's going to be a market for content is really what we're creating, where when you create a piece of content, you'll say, and this is the price that I would like for it, and then this is how long after someone commits to it I want to wait and see if anybody else is going to make me a better offer. So you could say, okay, I'm going to charge 100 LTB coins for this piece of content for whoever wants it, and then wait 6 hours after that. And so if somebody comes along after that, they can make a higher bid, and then that essentially gives them the right. So what we want to have is the ability for everything to be fixed price, but also to have the ability to be competitively bid upon in LTBcoin if if it's something that more than one person wants. You want the market wherever possible to value these things. Matt, remind me of what the actual question was, because I know I went off on a tangent.
It's so easy to do. How do you
easy,
distribute it amongst content creators? How do we measure that distribution?
Right. Okay. So there are two types of measurements that we're doing for this. One is called proof of quality, and proof of quality means you've been published. If you've been published on the LTB network, if your piece of content has been published on the LTB network, then you should be getting a part of that content distribution, and that is based on. So if there are 10 pieces of content that are released over the course of a week, which is probably the time period that we'll be doing this in, every week we'll do the payment cycle. Go ahead.
Maybe real quick, one of the pressing questions I think the community has is how are the percentages going to be assigned? And I know we've talked about this, and it's kind of still some gray area right now. So maybe you can dive into some more detail.
Yeah. There isn't a ton of detail right now. It's going to be, the most is going to go to content creation, somewhere in the 50 to 60% range.
Okay.
Somewhere in the 25 to 35% range, we'll go to the audience, and then somewhere in the 10 to 15% range is going to wind up going to the platform, and is going to pay for core roles and stuff like that. We have to have a CFO and CTO, stuff like that. So those are the, and again, like that'll be part of a weekly distribution that comes out, and it's not like people are going to get paid an incredible amount of LTB coin. It's going to be, again, part of this pegged process, and then whatever's left over from that is going to wind up in bounties for improving the platform and things like that. So the goal here is to try and keep the structure very efficient, and to try and make sure that we're pointing the vast majority of our resources at the problems we actually want to incentivize the solution to, which in this case is how to equitably create content and invest people in the success of that content moving forward, and to make it so that people can have. I mean, the reason why we're not doing something like LTBcoin with just the Let's Talk Bitcoin show is because what if we have a bad week? Like what if we have, what if we have a bad month? Then like the whole currency is reliant on our continued success. Whereas the more you can spread it out amongst different things, you essentially get, a self-fulfilling cycle where somebody's bad week is another person's good week, and so the whole thing evens out, and you get these nice synergies at times too. So, again, it's funny, we're talking about this decentralized thing, but we're trying to create a structure for getting big within a decentralized way, and that's hard.
Yes. Okay, so next question. I'm just going to go ahead and capture everybody's question. So anybody in the Google Hangout who has a question, please add your question to the chat log, and then I'm going to be pulling questions from YouTube over. So the next question is there a wallet?
So the wallet is basically what we're waiting on right now. Counterparty is currently in a testing phase. It's about to have its full client, essentially multi-wallet, web wallet launch on the testnet. I believe it's next week.
I gotta go.
So that's fine, Matthew. Thank you.
I'll see you. Thank you for having me here. I just wanted to try.
Okay.
I'm gonna miss you, man.
So, remind me?
Wallet. Is there a wallet?
Is there a wallet? Yeah, there's a multi-wallet. It's a web wallet. You can go to counterparty.co. I'll actually paste the link.
Yeah, and it's actually a beautifully designed wallet so far, given how early it is in its stage.
Yeah, one of the advantages of using something like one of the advantages of using something like Counterparty is that because it is built on the Bitcoin protocol, these multi-wallets essentially will let you have Bitcoin, XCP, which is the native currency of Counterparty, and then LTBcoin, as well as any other user-created asset like LTBcoin that is created on top of Counterparty. So I think that these multi-wallets, again, right now they're just one platform. You know, like you can't get Mastercoin assets onto this wallet, but that is a problem that's going to be solved fairly quickly, I think. I think that all of these, even though they're not technically compatible, are going to be interoperable pretty soon, and the wallets will become much easier. This thing where everything has its own Satoshi's client is not going to last for even another couple months.
Hey guys, real quick question. How can I find this? How can I tell my friend how to find this on YouTube?
Somebody paste him a link?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a problem.
So,
you're pasting a link, but where am I going to see that
questions over there?
There's a chat in this Google Hangout on the right.
Yeah.
Group chat.
I don't even see that. Oh, I see. There it is. Cool, man. Thanks.
Yeah,
so,
no problem.
we have another question. Ruben said, how does Adam imagine the first value will be created for LTBcoin? So what we're going to start off with, the first thing that you're actually going to be able to use LTBcoin for is we're going to have monthly to start, and then they're going to get to be more frequent auctions of sponsorship tokens, basically, that will represent 1 month, 30 seconds for 1 month on one show. And we're going to sell a total of 4 of those per 4 LTBcoin. They'll be auctioned off to the essentially highest bidder, and basically we're going to take any sort of sponsors that want to participate in this, even if they're just individuals, so long as they comply with the network standards for sponsors, which basically means that it can't be illegal stuff. You know, it can't be something that we think is a bad product, and you know, I mean, there's the standards that, of the sponsors that we allow on the LTB network are actually fairly strict. But I think, again, that by opening it up to people who are individuals and making it more about patronage than about sponsorship, that's really the direction that I'm interested in going with this, especially initially. I think that initially it's going to be the fans and also the shows within the space. I know that I have an intention with the LTB coins that I earned from from doing Let's Talk Bitcoin. I'm intending to buy some sponsorships on other shows for my projects.
And Adam, maybe you can jump in on what the first week of distribution is going to look like, because I know we've discussed that on the forum.
Yeah, so we're still figuring all this out. If you'd like to join the conversation about it, I really do encourage you to over at the LTBcoin.com forums and and get involved, because I don't, I mean, like, I'm like the chief evangelist and the chief user of this thing, but ultimately this is going to be a community project if it's going to be successful, because it's got to be bigger than me. I can't be a central point of failure on this.
Amen.
So so I'm not doing the Satoshi thing, which means that everybody just has to be really conscious that if you want to be involved, there are meaningful rewards for you being involved in this. And when we succeed, it's going to be everybody, not me. So that's the different thing about this compared to the projects that I've been working on to this point.
We are Satoshi.
Yeah, exactly. So again, I went off tangent.
Okay, so do you want to dive into next question? I thought Scott had a really good question. We see in the world of Bitcoin a news cycle that is incredibly quick. How do you anticipate solving this problem with LTBcoin, or is the genre of content you're describing not applicable? So I think
timely content is important, and there's definitely so I think what's going to happen actually is that we're going to have a couple of layers of filtering, basically, and the filtering is mostly going to be after publication. So before publication, it's basically going to be, like I mentioned, there's not just going to be one blog on LTB. Instead, it's going to be lots and lots of different people running curated blogs that are each branded with their own branding, but that all kind of have the ability to draw from this content pool, and when they publish, they then are entitled to receive a portion of these LTB coins that then lets them get more content.
Sure.
And create this essentially virtuous cycle. So, so the first level is those people picking stories. So if they see a story that's hot, then chances are pretty good they're going to grab it, especially if it's something that, if that's the type of thing that they do. So I kind of think that this problem is going to solve itself. I don't really want to set hard and fast rules. That's why I'm saying that, like, I want to give people the ability to make everything an auction, but I don't want to require that everybody wait 24 hours. I want to give them the option to be like, all right, this can be an hour-long thing because it's a hot rush, or it can be a 24-hour-long thing because, you know, I'd like to make sure that I maximize my exposure. So, yeah. I think that it's really, what we're creating is a set of rules here, and then people are going to choose specifics that work for their particular situation.
Great, thanks. Okay. Just going to pick at random now. Cameron Gray, what happens after 5 years? Will the network hope to be bootstrapped when the market saturates?
Yeah, the market, I'm viewing the bootstrapping period really as 3 years. I think that we will know if we're going to be successful with this by the end of the first year, and I think that it should be pretty obvious. So, you know, the good news is that we can only fail. You know, if we fail, then it's just like 99% of other networks out there. So, you know, I'm actually okay with that, because this is, I think that this is a more important innovation. You know, the model that we're talking about here, where you can essentially take this and bootstrap anything, is so much more important in concept. And I'm fixated on content because that's where I live, but it's really important. So that's kind of what I view what we're doing here, is we are blazing the trail and being the pathfinders and all that jazz, and we get to screw up, and if our hair catches on fire, that's okay, because then other people won't do the same thing that we did. So, yeah, I mean, it's a giant experiment. I think that so long as people go into this knowing that it's a giant experiment, that's why I'm kind of dodging questions like, what do you think it'll be worth at the beginning? I have no idea. It won't be worth anything at the beginning. I mean, like, I guess that's the answer, is that we're going to produce, that first week of distribution, there'll be like 1 million coins out there, of the 51 million that'll ever be created. And those coins are going to be distributed. Half of them are going to go to the community that is registered on LTBcoin.com, and half of them are going to go to people who have created the content that has brought LTB to the place that we are now. And so essentially that's something else I have to do. If you're interested in going back through every post we've ever made on LTB and figuring out who the author is and figuring out, how much content people provided from each of the individual things, and, like, we could basically backpay everybody from this 50%, invest everybody who's ever had anything to do with LTB, and, like, it'd probably be a good thing. But, like, I keep going back and forth on how much we should be looking back, or if we should just say, okay, clean start right here, moving forward, this is what we're doing. So I don't know. It's I mean, like, John, this is a question, I guess, that is more applicable to you really than anybody else here. You guys have been doing this show for 2 months. Do you think it's better if we back pay everybody, for the last 9 months, where you guys would be back paid for like a month's worth of material or 6 weeks worth of material? Or do you think it's better to start clean?
No, definitely back pay. No, I'm just kidding. I don't really care. I think Lidge and I are pretty easygoing when it comes to that, because we're true believers in LTB and Adam B. Levine, and I mean that sincerely. Man, I think it's hard to say. I mean, I think you can throw everybody a little bone, but not go all the way back. Do a little bit of that to say, hey, we're glad that you've been with us from the beginning, or not from the beginning, obviously, but from the time that you've been there, we're going to give you a little something. But I think people who are interested in doing this, like Lidge and I are, for Let's Talk Bitcoin, I mean, for Bitcoins and Gravy, we're interested in it for a variety of reasons, and this just seems to us like an extra perk that's coming along and an extra opportunity for us. So we're just happy to be along for the ride, to be honest with you.
Okay. Well, that's great. Again, like, that's the primary point of stress that I have on this project, is that I feel like I kind of set expectations with people, because we were really successful in January and November and December with LTB, when the price was way up and everybody was spending lots of money because they all felt like they were rich. But it's kind of as soon as we brought on 6 new shows and have another 5 in the wings, suddenly everything is getting a little bit tighter. So yeah, I mean, that's my primary concern, is I just want to make sure that people aren't feeling like I misled them, because this is where I think we're gonna really make the difference in the medium term.
Could I just jump in and ask a question?
Please.
About
Sure.
what's the difference between this and a stock? Calling everything a coin can get confusing. There's exchanges called this coin, and there's these coins, and there's whereas this is this not really more of an IPO, more of a public offering?
No, it's not really, because it's not legally binding. This is the thing.
It's more of a token.
Right. There's no legal obligation here. What we're doing, and again, we're not selling them. We're giving them away. So this is more akin to us saying, rather than paying our employees with dollars, we're going to pay them with store credit. And they can choose to keep that store credit and use it with us, or they can choose to sell it to somebody who values it, in a way that they appreciate. But it's not. It has none of the characteristics of stock besides the fact that it is a token that we find valuable. But I mean, like,
But
you
so, I
can't
mean,
spend
so
Apple stock with Apple.
But like, say for instance, a startup might be cash poor, and a startup could, like ourselves, Voltora, we could then, as we're building, we could say, hey, we have
Yes.
these a pre-mined or a bunch of these things, because mining's not really the issue. It's more about, here's these coins with a public ledger, and you get 50% of them, or 10%, or 1%, or whatever it is. That then it's sort of a reverse. Even though there's no value, but the more that
Yeah.
we put in, then we build the value onto these tokens. But tokens, coins,
A lot of the projects
shares,
that I'm
whatever
working
you
on
want to
right now
call
are
them.
built around this concept. Yeah, that's I completely agree with you. The difference just is that in our particular case, it really doesn't look like stock. In your case, where you're talking about a startup, and again, like, I have other projects I've been involved in where they really are more like startups, and it's being used instead of equity as a vehicle for stake. And so I think that they make a ton of sense to be used in that context. I think that they're going to replace stock in a lot of situations like that, especially for startups, just because, from a legal standpoint, it looks like it's actually pretty simple. Like, don't convert them into dollars, and it's just a token.
Yeah, yeah, and it would get around a whole lot of legal mumbo jumbo.
Yeah, it
Instead
might
of
not
calling
all,
them
but right
stocks.
now it seems like the opportunity is there if you wanted to start something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of envision this thing like a machine, and you're basically adding tokens into different parts of the machine, and it basically causes this engine to start turning. And hopefully, at the end of 5 years, we figured out the ways and means of actually being able to continuously distribute this currency within the system that basically benefits everybody and keeps that engine spinning and growing. So, okay, next question.
Yeah, so it looks like Actively Disengaged asked, how does someone become one of the bloggers on the LTB network? This is a process that we're actually still figuring out. The blogging thing came about because I realized that an individual article on a blog is not really like a show, but a blog itself is actually quite like a show. It has continuity of branding. It has continuity of, like, essentially what I do with Let's Talk Bitcoin is I curate. I'm on maybe 50% of the content, but I introduce all of it. I provide the thread of continuity that goes through it all. So I view a blog as kind of the same way. Our new platform is essentially going to support the ability to create as many of these subsidiary blogs as we want, and turning them into a custom branded thing is just going to be as simple as as putting together a skin for that particular character of that particular blog, and then spinning it out. So really, I don't know. We might have a contest. We might, I haven't really gotten that far yet of picking how we're going to figure that out. It might be worth talking about another point.
Definitely. Okay, so next question. How is this different from crypto stocks? Can you just sell shares?
Yes, we could sell shares, but I don't know if that's legal. And we're a California-based company, and I don't really want to tempt fate, because a lot of times, even if what you're doing is legal, if it's not well understood, that kind of can be the same thing.
All right, next question. If you purchase a piece of content using LTBcoin, do you get exclusivity? How will you check for this?
Yeah, so the exclusivity question is interesting. We're not actually asking for exclusivity on really anything. What we will be enforcing, though, is exclusivity within the network. So, for example, if a piece of content if an article is purchased for one blog, and the deal doesn't specify that it's not exclusive, because I assume that there's going to be, again, I don't want to make any hard and fast rules here, but I assume that most blogs are going to want exclusive content rather than not. So we'll be able to enforce within the network, okay, well, this piece of content was published here, so therefore it doesn't qualify for proof of publishing payments anywhere else on the network.
Um, how does someone become one of the bloggers on the LTB network?
Yeah, so still figuring that out. Like we said, I see there's another question there that says if someone wants to become a content creator on the network, what should they be doing right now? That actually is a good question. You should be thinking about what types of content you want to create. Specifically, so I mentioned this before. Right now, the plan had been that we would publish anything there that we have a. Let me start over. We have a rate card basically that is called proof of publishing that talks about the various point allocations basically that each type of piece of content generates for the team that creates it. This is a system I'm calling autonomous content teams, basically as self-forming content teams. Anyways, the point is that um,
We want to make it as easy as possible for people to generate content within the network that's, I think, distributed also within the network. Correct? And that's kind of where you're going with the autonomous content teams. I don't know, maybe you can discuss that basic idea, since people are kind of new to that term.
Yeah, so the autonomous content teams, I'm running a couple of different papers here. That's really the issue, is that these are each technical papers describing the types of markets that I think that we need to create. And so it's a little bit hard to explain some of this stuff, lacking the crutch of a paper. The long and the short of it is that I don't want to make any rules. Or rather, I don't want to make any subjective rules. I want to make rules where we can say, okay, these are the broad standards to comply with. So like I said, you'll submit a 50-minute show, right? A 50-minute audio show, or a blog that publishes at least one article per week. Like those will be the minimums in order to create this type of platform or sub-platform on top of our platform. From that, gosh, I keep getting lost in this explanation already, and I know that nobody else is going to follow it if I'm already getting lost. Let's move on to a different thing. We're figuring out what content creators need to do. The goal is to make it as easy as possible. Once the new website is done, and I think we're going to have a test version up by the end of the month, then it'll be much more clear, and we'll be able to start playing around with the new platform and seeing exactly how difficult it's going to be to do this stuff.
I've got a question, Adam. So other than earning LTBcoin for content, let's say someone just wants to have their poems or their prose, their short stories on the LTB network because that's what they enjoy doing. And let's say that there is someone who's talented at that, and viewers, listeners start to really appreciate what the person's creating, just excellent poetry or haiku or whatever. Let's say that person is not, by putting those out there, earning LTBcoin, and let's say that for whatever reason, well, I guess my question is there incentive that at some point a blog would pick them up, or is it fair to say that some of their incentive is just having a platform to allow people in the Bitcoin community to hear, to listen to to be able to read their poems and read their short stories?
I think that there's definitely an advantage to having a centralized audience. This is something that I figured out fairly early on, is that it's always better to have a website that has 7 updates a week rather than a website that has 1 update a week. People don't make websites that have 1 update a week a part of their schedule, and it's very, very difficult to become a part of people's lives. Really, I mean, that's what we've done in a lot of ways with Let's Talk Bitcoin. It's what a lot of these types of podcasts do, is they integrate themselves and become useful, and then that so there's that side of it. You said a couple of things. First off, we're not saying that I'm not saying in any way that poetry or songs or anything like that don't fit within what we're doing. I actually think they do, but I think that, again, like, there will be a blog that'll be like the poetry blog, or and you'll have a bunch of them, as many people as want to curate that. You'll have a blog that's about songs or something like that, or a show that isn't really informational at all. It's soundscapes and songs and things like that. So I think the creatively there are a lot of options. The final point was, why would a blogger accept this even if they're not earning it from LTB? And I think that is, the same could be said about Bitcoin. They're not earning Bitcoin from writing most of the time, or from doing a song most of the time, but they accept tips in it. Is it because Bitcoin is so amazing? No, it's because Bitcoin is valuable. And so tips are money that you didn't have before. So it's always, that's a good thing. I view LTB as the same thing. I think that it will have a value, and the market will figure it out pretty quick. It might be a low value because there's going to be a lot of units at first, but that value just means that when people tip, they're going to feel that much more okay with tipping, 1,000 LTB because it's worth $1. I mean, like that's people do that. We've seen this with Doge, and I think that's the lesson to learn.
Yeah. Nice. Thanks.
Okay, so next question. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, just because last night it was 2 a.m. for me, so I'm not sure if my memory is quite correct. But weren't we discussing about the possibility of having a kind of market for content where people can basically post ideas that they want to write about and or create shows about, and then the ACTs could pick from there? Adam? Matt?
Yes. Yeah. No. There are a lot of expansions to this, and I'm trying not to go too far down the rabbit hole. But yeah, last night one of the things that we talked about, I've been really obsessed with Reddit-like interfaces. With interfaces where you have the ability for communities to do sorting essentially and curating themselves by upvotes and downvotes. But the thing that I don't like about Reddit is that people just do it, basically. So it becomes, because there's no cost associated with it, because there's no value associated with it, it becomes more of a, I'm expressing my opinion, as opposed to I'm, stating something that is important to me. And so people do it for reasons that aren't necessarily great, and you find a lot of content gets downvoted just because people don't even bother to look at it and just downvote stuff. I mean, like there are a variety of reasons why just allowing random user accounts to vote on stuff and then have that impact sorting isn't always great. But what I think that we can do with something like LTBcoin, again, because it's not worth very much and people are okay to spend something that's not worth very much, it becomes kind of easy for us to, as like the first level of moderation, to have people post, either ideas or the actual piece of content before it gets published somewhere in that marketplace, and then people who are interested in the content but not necessarily interested, people who are interested in the content but not necessarily in the market to publish it on a blog can say, yeah, this looks good. I would like to see this. I would like to see this posted somewhere. I'd like to see this get exposure. And so they vote it up, and then after that, maybe you get like 2 or 3 free vote ups per day or something like that. But then after that, if you want to vote something up, then you tip it. You send 1 LTB to it, or you send however many LTB to it that you want. Those LTB get passed through to the person who created the content, and then people who are moderating these blogs or moderating these shows have the ability to just look at this list and say, oh, well, there's one that a whole bunch of people already liked. It hasn't been published, so it makes more sense for me to get that one because I know that the community is going to have a good response. But at the same time, because of that, the price might be higher. The price for that piece of content might be higher. And again, if we were talking about a market where you're trying to absolutely maximize your efficiency with what you're, and conserve as much as possible, this might not work, but I don't think that's the environment we're going into. I think that content creators are going to have a lot of surplus, and it's going to make more sense to have a better show that takes less work from your part and is higher quality overall, which adds more value to the network, and you control some of the other coins, than it does to not spend any funds. I think that this is going to, again, like I think Paul Boyer, who's on the call for Mad Money Machine, he's probably going to keep a lot more just because he does the solo show. He does all his editing himself. He doesn't really have interviewers or anything like that. So like that's totally him. But I think that there are a lot of other shows that are going to spend 50% on content that comes from outside, just because, again, like if you do that, you could probably get some really good content. You could probably up the quality of your show without actually having to do more work yourself, which is quite valuable in my experience. I've been enjoying it.
So yeah, I think you have to kind of look at LTBcoin like right now as kind of an ongoing conversation that's in development, in the same way that I think Bitcoin was started. So I think kind of really grasping, taking in what the community wants from LTBcoin is really going to allow us to leverage a successful product.
Yes. So, Matt, I see that there's another question here that says, could you produce partial content, e.g. the basis for a blog post, but someone else might contribute value through editing, improving writing style, etc.? And yeah, I think that that's totally going to happen. I think that that's really what we're designing, and we're trying to create tools or connect tools that will let people form, like if you want to, it's really interesting, like I had a really interesting experience working with Charlie Shrem a couple of weeks ago on the Mt. Gox piece that we did, and that was something that came together in about 36 hours over a series of emails and then a couple of Skype calls and stuff like that. And it was a total collaboration, and we produced, I think, a really good piece. And there were about 4 or 5 people involved with the production of it. So I think that is actually going to be much more common because we're going to have a community of people who are looking to do stuff like that, who want to have that experience and who want to create value in a collaborative fashion. And we have all the tools to be able to do it, and this gives us essentially the liquidity to be able to say, rather than this being something that you're going to have to do speculatively for 6 months, just do it speculatively once. Then, if you do it once, you get published, then you're in the allocation and you get a bunch of LTBcoin, which then gives you basically the ability to outsource your entire production to other people in the LTBcoin community if you wanted to. So, I don't know if that answered your question, but that's what I got.
Yeah, and I'm pulling these questions from YouTube, so yeah. I will do my best to kind of voice, I think, what their thoughts are. But yeah, I kind of envision, the system working like, so you're attending a conference and maybe you have struck up a conversation with somebody who's making some waves in the industry and you want to record the content. So you record the content and then you submit that content to the network, and then they use that network and try to curate it to fit into shows or channels or however I think we approach this problem. So
yeah, I think that yeah.
we will see.
So I've got a question, Adam. As Lidge and I have the show, and occasionally we wish that we had some better content. Pardon me. So do you envision this as something where we'll have our little stash of LTBcoin and we're looking for some extra content, so we'll be able to go to, let's say, a library of content that's there on LTB and grab from this library of interview with somebody or a piece from some major newspaper or something that we can read. Will we be able to grab and buy in an easy
so the
fashion,
newspaper thing, what you could do, what you could do is you can grab pieces of finished content, basically. If you want to grab pieces of unfinished content, I mean, it's your prerogative, but rather than like the newspaper thing, the only way I see that being something that you pay for in LTBcoin is if like I or somebody else were like, this is a good story, and here's a recording of me reading it, and it's edited, or and again, like I can see stuff like that, but if you just want to read something out of the newspaper, then by all means, just read it out of the newspaper. You don't have to pay anybody.
Right, but I guess what I'm getting at is, will there be a kind of a library there for podcasters to choose from? So we want to grab.
Yes, but it's less a library. I think that there will be two things. I think there's going to be a market, and then things that don't get purchased on the market will go in the library. Is what I suspect will happen.
Okay.
But because we're doing this exclusivity thing, it means that there isn't really going to be a collective library where you'll be able to go back 6 months and. You might be able to do that for clips. Like, I want to have a clip library. I've been talking about that for the last month or so. And I'd really like to have a library, like, of all the interviews that we've done and all the content so that people can go back and grab clips from that, and then you can use it for clips. But for stuff that you would pay for, I view that as more for services and for original new content that has yet to be aired. Got
it. Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody just asked a great question to Mois. Ahola. Are we limited to only Bitcoin cryptocurrency related content? So I think this is something that we've been addressing and tossing around in our brains, which method is kind of the best avenue to pursue. Do we pick the specific Bitcoin only media market, or do we address other content providers issues? So maybe Adam can dive into some more.
I think that we're going to, again, I don't know the answers to this yet. We're still figuring it out. But I think what's going to happen is that we're going to start off with cryptocurrency-only content, and then I think that, again, because of the way that we have the blog structured, people will be able to spin off other blogs, and content is just, it's just content. So if there's a demand for it, if people want to run blogs on the LTB network in this fashion, or want to run shows that don't conform with this, and people want to advertise on them, it doesn't, that's actually fine by me. The conversation we've been having internally is whether to do this as LTBcoin or like a talk coin or something like that. So that is something that's under consideration. I think that at this point we're pushing forward on LTBcoin because if we're going to make some mistakes early, it's probably better to make them with a smaller ecosystem and then take the lessons we learned here and expand it out into a larger project. But at the same time, with cryptocurrency, we're starting a 5-year project here. So it might make more sense just to start with the thing that we think we're going to switch to in 6 months anyways. So, but, again, these are ongoing questions. How are we for time? Oh, we're actually fine. Great, terrific. Go ahead.
Okay.
I have an interview that I have to get to at noon, but that's pretty much my only constraint. We can go as long as we need to.
Okay, great. Actively had a great comment. If Andreas Antonopoulos charges for interviews, he's going to be the LTBcoin Bill Gates.
Yeah, I had a good conversation with Andreas and Stephanie about this. I should mention that. So far, I am pioneering this project. This is the project that I'm pushing. I've briefed Stephanie and Andreas about it, and we've had conversations about it, and they're interested. But everybody has like a million projects, and so I'm the guy who's pushing this forward, and they're excited about getting some of the back pay once we do the day one distribution.
Yeah, I think everybody's excited about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions in the Google Hangout?
Yeah, I do. Have you guys heard of Help a Reporter Out, Haro.com?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
Do you anticipate doing something like that to kind of surface new content creaters? I think that's an interesting solution. Yeah. Because and then on the flip side, you were mentioning, sticking with LTBcoin. I think that's a smart move for the initial launch. Prove your concept, and then I think this could scale because we see a lot of content producers on the mainstream side of things, like Chicago, sometimes elsewhere, are looking for solutions, especially with microtransaction relating to content consumption. So I could see this being something that could be basically licensed out to other content creators, platforms, etc.
Well, so licensing is an interesting word, and I'm actually curious for your thoughts on this, Scott. I'm not claiming any ownership to any of this stuff. I mean, like, we're putting out a protocol here. It's going to be open source, and so I kind of figure that my monetization from that side comes from consulting for companies like that, but I don't really see a licensing structure. I mean, right?
Well, you could take the Red Hat Linux approach, offer a dashboard, scale it that way, basically enable any Chicago Sun-Times like, hey, here's 7 different means of analytics, distribution, etc. So
right, cool, yeah, that makes sense to me. So another venue that we're looking at, again, like, we're not talking about most of the stuff that we're looking at doing, but I've been talking about this LTBcoin project privately with people for about 2 months, and I've had a really, really positive response. And so I think that we're going to start off with the sponsorships being the thing that you can do with it, and the tipping and all that stuff. But what we're going to move towards is one where actually this is a really useful token that lets you do things that you can't do with Bitcoin in a whole variety of capacities. So I think that's where kind of the long-term value of this comes from. It seems like we're kind of wrapping up the question portion of it. If people have other things, I'm happy to address anything else. But one thing, we are actively looking for developers at this point. We are actively looking for, and one of the things that, so if you get involved now, you're going to be part of the LTBcoin initial distribution, which is, like I said, that 50% of the week 1 money supply that's going to be distributed. But I don't have bounties set up yet. I don't have a lot of specificity on the projects. We're looking for people to help us figure out where we need to expand and where we need to continue to define this thing. My task over the next week, while we get ready for the test launch, is to finish defining all of the rules. And you can actually find links to all of those documents as they are currently created at the LTBcoin.com forums under the it's in the LTBcoin talk section entitled Proof of Publishing. So it's a set of 2 documents, and there will probably be a 3rd document, and you can also see the proposed distribution of coins in there. And like I said, it's a weekly distribution. It starts off at about 700,000 a week, and by the end of year 3, it's down to under 100,000 per month. So it's a pretty aggressive deflationary trend. But again, the goal here is to further emphasize and reward people who are here early, because that really, when it comes to a network like this, when you're starting a podcast or starting a blog, getting that first 1,000 readers or listeners is the barrier. And then once you get past that, these things kind of start feeding themselves. So what we're doing here primarily is giving everybody the ability to bootstrap past that hard part point and just start with the part where you can just focus on content and not have to worry about any of the other stuff. So that's what I got. So get involved now. It's a good time, and help us define, frankly, what the job should be. I am definitely going to be looking for a CFO. I'm definitely going to be looking for a CTO. There are a variety of other positions that are on the core organizational side. Probably we'll have a COO too. So if you want to get involved, now's a real good time.
Yeah, Adam, will you ping me about that offline?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
And Adam, are there going to be any traveling troubadour positions?
So, so what I want to do with this is, because this is kind of like our store credit or our company credit, I want to provide a lot of these services. And as we pick up other sponsors, I think that it's a no-brainer for us to partner with Cheap Air and to try to get Cheap Air to accept LTBcoin, or at least to accept it from us internally, in exchange for travel. And we'll do that, take that as a sponsorship and trade kind of thing. We can really have these kind of barter relationships where LTBcoin can become a useful thing in a variety of capacities. And in the meantime, while we're doing the bootstrapping, I'd like to have a travel agency basically set up that is built around Bitcoin, but that also is on board with LTBcoin and can take that, and even potentially give it a preferential rate. Because the interesting part is that, the reason why people are interested broadly in cryptocurrencies that aren't Bitcoin is because they have more deflationary potential than Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin is the oldest cryptocurrency, and so it's the furthest along in its life cycle. And because of that, it doesn't have as much of its deflationary potential as something that cost a couple of pennies. So there's definitely a profit motive that's involved here, and a lot of the vendors who I've spoken with have been very interested in that, just because if they're interested in Bitcoin, they're interested in deflationary currencies because they think it's going to make them money.
Yeah, nice.
Definitely. Maybe we could talk about some of the audience models that we're talking about, being able to actually generate coins by listening or participating in content in different ways.
Sure. So these are, again, still up for debate, but so like I said, there's going to be a percentage somewhere in the 25 to 35% range of these tokens that are given to the audience each week. And there are a couple of ways that we've already talked about that are, or there's a couple of ways that I think that this is going to happen. One of them, so the basic model is this. You pick an incentivized action. So let's say it's commenting on the Let's Talk Bitcoin blogs. So people who comment on blog posts are tracked on a per hour or per day basis or something like that, and the number of comments logged. Comments that aren't spam and don't get marked as such essentially count for proof of commenting, which then takes a percentage of that percentage that's going to the audience. So it might be, say, 10% of the audience allocation for the week, and it's distributed to people who commented based on how many comments they made over that time period. So because you do this like every hour or every day, if you comment on a day when few people have commented besides you, then it's actually can be potentially very profitable for you, because you're competing. Essentially, it's like each instance is localized mining, except instead of there only being one winner, there is everybody's winner, and it's all proportional. So it's like everybody's in a localized mining pool almost. We've also talked about this for tipping, where like if you send a tip, to any person on the LTB network or any content on the LTB network, then it gets logged as you sent a tip, and then based on the value of that, it's compared against the value of all the other tips that everybody else sent during that same hour or day or whatever, and you split the LTB coins in that way. So tipping can be a profitable enterprise. Donating money to somebody can generate profit for you because if you do it at a time when nobody else is doing it, you might actually get back more than you put in. So there's a bunch of models like that I want to do. And the listening part is actually probably the hardest one, because it's difficult to tell if someone is actually listening to it or if they're just playing it and then walked away from their phone. We actually want people to listen. So, Matt, I know you've been talking about proof of education as a way to go down. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I brought it up on the forum that basically we could establish a model that's either proof of education, proof of learning, that would basically quiz users consistently while they're listening to content. And maybe the question, it asks them for a multiple choice answer or a short explanation that is somehow verified by the community. could be several different options. But what I think would really be great about this is we're actually encouraging users to learn more about Bitcoin, and they're actually earning a cryptocurrency that they can liquidate into Bitcoin if they want, or use for different purposes outside of computational mining. And I think learning and building more evangelists in Bitcoin is really what the community absolutely needs right now, especially with all the information going around about everything that went down with Mt. Gox to everything that's happened. So,
Hey, can I ask you guys a side question? It's
Sure.
in reference to Cryptsy. So I've been using Cryptsy for a while, and I guess I trust them, but I don't really understand, how much or how little we should trust an exchange. So I think they're in Florida. Big Vern's the owner. I read an article about him. I don't remember his full name, but can you talk just for a second about that? Like, to what extent do you trust Cryptsy, or can we rely on Cryptsy to be here next year or the year after, not gox us, not pull a gox on us?
I think that Cryptsy is actually one of the more dangerous exchanges out there.
I hate to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm in the same boat. I use Cryptsy. There just aren't many good options because it just depends what type of risk you're talking about. Cryptsy is.
I don't think Cryptsy is necessarily dangerous. I think some of the coins that they operate within the network are dangerous.
Well, I'm talking about the U.S. I'm talking about operating that exchange in Florida. That's in my view, that's the most dangerous thing that they do.
Why?
Because we don't know what's going to happen, and banking relationships can change, and Cryptsy is sort of insulated from that because they're sort of insulated from that because they don't trade dollars. It's just, but they want to trade dollars. They're trying to go into that. So again, I don't know. I've been getting a itchy feeling about Cryptsy for the last couple of weeks, but again, it's just because of the environment that we're in, and I don't know.
We could essentially have fiat coins on the counterparty protocol, right? And you could exchange these fiat coins for LTB coins.
Trading the coins isn't the problem. Trading the coins is, and again, we don't need to use Cryptsy at all. We can just use the decentralized network. I'm not really viewing dollars as an onboarding mechanism for LTBcoin. I'm thinking that people are going to come in from other cryptocurrencies and specifically from Bitcoin. I think that's the vast majority of what we'll get.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that, frankly. I think that, this is already hard enough to understand. It's going to take a while before people get it. So I'd rather that we get people who are at least savvy enough to be able to get into Bitcoin rather than trying to explain to people who can't even do dollars.
Is there a safe decentralized exchange coming up? I know this is really off subject, but is there a safe decentralized exchange coming up that people will be able to rest easy having, 10 million Doge coins there or 200 Litecoins or what have you?
Well, the counterparty wallet that's coming out has a built-in decentralized exchange. So I don't know if it's going to be,
I know of at least one or two. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, there are several coming out. This is a problem that's been known since. I think I started talking with Charles Hoskinson about putting together an X Prize for a decentralized exchange back in July of last year or something like that. So this has been a problem that's been really apparent. And Gox has always been, Gox just failed this time. That's the only difference. We went through this exact same learning curve last time, except they stuck around, and so people didn't, it didn't end. That's the only different thing that happened this time.
Yeah, thanks.
John, let me just chime in on the idea of a decentralized exchange. Basically, the way Counterparty works, if I traded with you over Counterparty, Counterparty never holds any of our coins. You see, it's a peer-to-peer exchange. The idea of a Counterparty exchange does not exist. The exchange happens through the protocol. Am I making myself clear?
Yes.
Because before you asked a decentralized exchange where you can trust having all your coins. No. On such an exchange, you have your coins always yourself with your own private keys. And then once the exchange matches, basically the way Counterparty, just for whoever doesn't, I'm copywriting a bit for Counterparty, I've been a bit involved. The way it works is I'd place a sell order, for example, for any kind of crypto. And if I'm matched with your buy order, then when I place a sell order, the funds are held kind of in escrow, and at the same time, the funds are not held in escrow. There's a fee which you pay, and at the same time, there's a small fee which you can pay to kind of reserve Sorry, I'm just confusing this a little bit.
No, you're not. You actually cleared it up for me quite a bit. Basically, you're still instead of as an exchange like Gox, you don't have a wallet on there that's yours on Crypto. You don't have a wallet on there that's yours that you can control completely. They control what you have, and you just have numbers up there on your computer screen that show how many Litecoins you have, for instance. But you're saying with a decentralized exchange, I actually just still hold whatever Litecoins, for instance, I have in my own wallet, and that makes a lot of sense to me, and that sounds like the way that it should be.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's what
exactly.
we've been waiting for. It's just been hard to do these things to this point.
Yeah. No, that helped a lot. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. So there are two questions from the chat. One is, can you make physical LTB coins? Yes, you can, and we're going to.
How about T-shirts?
There's more to it than that, but I don't want to give it away until I can absolutely make sure that we've got the partners on board to do it. But I'm pretty excited about it. Okay, so the other thing is talking about the proof of commenting and proof of tipping. And the question was, does this make comments on high traffic days less valuable? And the answer is yes, it does. It means that comments and tips are most valuable when few people are doing them, which actually I think is a good reflection of reality. So if you are, like if a piece of content or a day is particularly popular with regards to tipping, people should ultimately be tipping because they want to tip, because they think the content is good, and because they're willing to, and because they think that it's a fair thing to do. The proof of tipping part, the compensation part, is a bootstrapping mechanism, but it's only needed when nobody's doing it. When everybody's doing it, it's just like a little passive income stream for for participating. And I think that it's still going to be a decent amount that's going to be distributed on a per day basis for all of these things, just because again we're using big enough numbers that we don't have to give people 0.1 of a coin. We can give people 10 coins for a simple thing, and that's okay because we have a lot of them because they're not worth too much. But the goal is that they will eventually be. So yeah, everything, all of these mechanisms are designed to make it so that we never have a day or a week where there's nothing. Where regardless of what the thing is, whether it's content or it's, and like that's the other thing is that by doing this, you convince people to spread things out, because otherwise, what if everybody just wants to release on Wednesday? Well, they can. There's no disadvantage. But if you have a system like this where it tracks it by the day or by the week or whatever, that it encourages people to release on a schedule that actually makes sense for humans, as opposed to make sense for maximizing your potential impact.
Nice.
Okay, I'm jumping out of here. See you guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Scott.
See ya.
Okay, so
Take care, Scott.
Ruben says, what is the time window for accepting comments in the proof of comment protocol? We're still talking about it. I'd like it to be per day or per hour. I'm unclear on exactly how much of a pain I'm going to be inviting if I say per hour. So, but I think that that's a good, I mean, that makes sense to me. Then you can cater to a completely international audience, or at least people who stay up all night, and you incentivize participation basically around the clock with a per hour thing. And eventually, I mean, like the end game of LTBcoin really is that we wind up with a whole bunch of 24-hour networks, and there are just so many different options you can choose from that you never have to listen to anything or never have to read anything that you don't think is going to be very high value to you, because you're picking curators, really, is what you're doing in this system. You're choosing which curators you most value the work of, and then getting everything that they do, and being able to make decisions on the fly and be alerted when other people are doing something that's interesting that you might have turned off. But ultimately, it's about putting the choice into the hands of the individual who is making the content decision.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Adam, we have Andreas wanting to get on the call. Can you send him a link to the Google
sure.
Hangout?
Do we have room? 1, 2, 3.
I think we just had somebody leave.
Great, yeah.
Scott just left.
It's on the link is in the description of the video. So if Andreas just wants to click that, and there he is. Hey, Andreas. Can you hear me?
I can. Hello.
Hey.
Good morning. Sorry, I was still on listening to the YouTube, so I was a few minutes behind the live feed.
That's fine.
I like that shirt you're wearing.
The blue on blue background.
Really nice.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm feeling very round-headed today. So how is everyone? I've been listening to this discussion. It's very, very interesting. Great conversation. Great questions so far. Sorry I can't turn on my my video camera. I've got a little sticker over the thing, and I can't really.
It's no problem.
Well, so let me, so actively disengaged is asked another question that I think is good. It says, if someone writes an amazing article and someone else wants to do an audio version of it, will that be allowed? Will the original writer get a portion of the audio's LTB coin? So what you would essentially have to do here is, there are two ways that this could happen. You could have it published, the text version of it, on somebody's blog. Somebody could select it for that, and then you could produce, or you could find someone to produce for you the audio version of it, and then you'd have to find somebody else to include it in a show. And so you could ostensibly be paid twice for work that's done once, but there would have to be someone who knows that it's already been released in these other channels and finds a lot of value from it. So again, like if it's such an amazing piece that a bunch of people want to run it, then yeah, I think that's true. But otherwise, I suspect actually what's going to happen is that audio versions are going to be viewed as value adds for video or for text things, because they'll be able to be easily embedded into both our new website and our player. So people will have the ability essentially to consume it more than one way. So you're essentially just broadening your audience by adding an audio version. So it should, in theory, at least according to the theory I'm working off now, make whatever you're doing more valuable to have a video version or an audio version, frankly. It just depends on if you can convince other people that it's valuable and get them to pay you for it.
Cool.
Andreas, did you have any questions, or you just want to hang out? Well, like I said, we've talked about this, I think once. I've like told you about it a couple of times. We had a conversation about it the other day, but outside of that, this is a very new thing that we're doing here, and everybody's been so busy. So if you have any questions, feel free to jump in.
Oh, thank you. I don't think I'm ready to ask questions. Just wanted to participate in the discussion and hang out.
Sounds good. Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, this came from the YouTube forum. Just wanted to clarify that decentralized trade takes one confirmation to execute.
Is that true? So yeah, so that's the downside about decentralized exchanges, is that you can't do like fast trading with it. You can't do like a whole bunch of little trades. You can, because in order to confirm, essentially it has to wait for the Bitcoin blockchain, which is every 10 minutes, or I guess it's been closer to 5 recently. So it's useful for the peer-to-peer fashion, for the trustless fashion, but it's not useful if you're trying to trade for pennies or try to get the absolute best deal possible. That really is where centralized exchanges come in, because they allow you that really fast and granular matching.
Okay. Yeah, Max has a question. Max, if you have your mic, you can go ask it, or I can say it for you. Are you planning to issue LTBcoin on additional platforms like Mastercoin or Ethereum? I guess it's someone will do it at some point and create some kind of pass-through.
So what they're talking about is when Ethereum announced that they were going to, do a fundraiser. I believe it was on Ripple's platform. I don't recall the exact. I don't recall the system. A peer cover. That was what it was. They set up a pass-through that essentially was they collected funds that they said were going to be used to buy Ether once it was available, and they issued tokens that were like futures on those Ether that they were going to buy. So this happened in a non-official capacity. They kind of just did it, and the Ethereum guys weren't super happy about that. So I actually, the other day, maybe 2 days ago, I approached the Ripple Federation chat channel and was like, hey, we're releasing LTBcoin. I saw this happen last time. I'd like this to be an official thing, an officially sanctioned thing. So yeah, I am interested in doing, they're essentially derivatives on these other platforms, but I'm really concerned that it's going to confuse the issue. So I'm a little bit torn on this, and again, if you have an opinion about this, I'm not really a financial tools guy. That's not really where I live. I'm just trying to figure out what the best way to do this is. And I want the free market, like I said, in every way that we can. I think that the free market should be determining our prices and should be determining the value that's being created here, because otherwise it's just arbitrary and I'm just making shit up. And if I want to do that, then it's a lot easier ways to do it.
Hey, Adam, that's what religion I've been doing, just making shit up.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what it is. Making content is just Like just putting yourself out there and then figuring out ways to dress it up in a way that isn't going to make people, shake their head and walk away. I mean, like that's the thing is that, like I don't want to get political on this, but I don't get political generally because I feel like there are words you can say that that just flip a switch in somebody's head and they don't want to listen to you anymore. And I think that that's like the worst thing that you can do is to have somebody just completely tune you out. It's better instead to keep the conversation going and to try and understand what piece of the puzzle they're missing. I've said this before on the show, but that really is the thing: is you take yourself and you put yourself into the eyes of someone else, and you look out and you see what part of their understanding is flawed, and what little piece of evidence they just don't have in their head at all, and then you tell them that piece, or you help them find that piece, and then you wait. You don't tell them, oh well, and now the world is complete for you. You just kind of wait for it to percolate down through their consciousness, and then they eventually get to it. So it's a slower process, but it's I think it's a more effective way to do it. I don't remember why I was talking about that.
No, that was good, man.
Adam, how can we use the proof of burn protocol to actually prevent, I guess, the success of LTBcoin on top of Counterparty? Because this is one of the things we discussed last night.
Do you mean why isn't proof of burn bad for us?
Yes, exactly.
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of confusion about proof of burn, and I didn't understand it for actually quite a long time. And I missed the burn because of it. So when you're looking at how coins are created, there's more than one way to do it. The first ways were through mining, and that was done, through shared computational power. And then we had Mastercoin-style fundraisers, where there's essentially a Bitcoin address or some sort of cryptocurrency address, and people send funds to it, and then based on a prescribed rate or some other set of rules, they get a new token in exchange for that. So that's like a IPO model, like a fundraiser model. There's another model, though, that's been used recently called proof of burn, and it was used by the Counterparty protocol to create I believe it was 2.1 million coins or something like that. Basically, for every 1 Bitcoin you sent to an address that had no private key, where the coins would be lost and trapped forever, you would then, when they issued the tokens, get 100 XCP, which is the Counterparty token. So it's called proof of burn because it's like throwing them into the fire. You can never get them back, and nobody else gets them either. So it's like a sacrifice. But on the flip side, it's kind of like when the Spanish got to the New World and burned their boats. It means that everybody is in the same situation, and we're all screwed if we fail. And nobody's getting rich off of this unless we all get rich off of this. Is basically kind of the ethos that goes into it. So if you look at it like a funding mechanism, then it's ridiculous, and it's terrible, and it's stupid, because you're burning money, and that money could be spent on development, which is the whole point. So Counterparty burned 2,100 Bitcoin in its total process. So that's, it's not a small amount of money. But they didn't need it. And what it meant is that they don't have any trust issues because there's not a giant pile of money sitting somewhere that somebody has to have the responsibility of choosing how to spend. So because there's no money to spend, you can't spend it badly. The developers actually have done quite well in this, I think, because as someone who does want to, like if you're going to start one of these currencies and do something with proof of burn, unless it's a joke, which it could have been a hoax, you really have to believe that you're going to succeed because you're destroying your own Bitcoin in order to get the tokens. So, like, that's the thing is that I think it worked really well for them. Like if you look at the value of the XCP token right now, even when people don't understand it, haven't heard of it, and don't know what's going on, it's still selling for somewhere between 3 times and 10 times as much as the burn rate was. So people who burned coins, doesn't really matter. They already at least made their money back 300%. And the potential for this thing, because it has about 10% the supply of Bitcoin and a variety of other reasons, is really massive. So that's the proof of burn side. The reality for us is that it doesn't matter. It just means that it's actually a kind of drama-free platform because there's no money to be spent, and there's nobody who's going to get rich off of this except for people who actually burned Bitcoin, just like everybody else. This is the problem that I had with Ethereum, was that I felt like there was a set of rules for founders and there was a set of rules for everybody else. And I think that any time you design sets of rules that have special rules for one person or one group of people to the detriment of everyone else, like that's a problem. And I think that the community perceives these things to be a problem. So that's what I want to do here is I want to have this be very reliable. And I'm putting my reputation behind it is really what's happening here is that the Let's Talk Bitcoin network, but me personally mostly, are putting my reputation behind this. And if it fails, it's going to be a failure that's going to be on me. So I'm very motivated for it to succeed. You know, broadly, I think that these coins, there's going to be a lot of them coming out that follow the same model, and they're basically reputation coins. Because the reputation, we are monetizing the reputation of the individual. And just as, you know, Snoop Dogg or Dre is going to do it, you know, so will LTB first.
That makes a lot of sense. I didn't understand proof of burn until now. So I'm glad you explained it, Adam. That was really interesting. It also leads me to now have a new theory on what happened at Mt. Gox. I think they just launched a massive proof of burn, 750,000 Bitcoin new currency called the Carpellus.
Oh, jeez.
Just to add to this. First of all, here's a blog post, just quick and dirty on Facepin. I don't think it's even published yet on Counterparty, which really goes into some detail on proof of burn. One way to look at it is when you're mining Bitcoins, most of us have probably done that, you're actually burning fossil fuels, you're burning resources used to create your mining rigs, and you're converting that into Bitcoin. So you're basically foregoing a resource that you have or that you have purchased and obtaining another resource. So that's the really, in a nutshell, way to explain it to people. And if you look at that Pastebin, I go into quite some detail. Is there any way to actually send an RTF file over here? I'm just scared to drag it in and screw up something.
It should probably be fine if you drag it in to the chat. But when I'm looking at the Pastebin...
That's a great explanation, by the way. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It essentially enforces scarcity by forcing you to destroy something valuable. And it's better than proof of stake because you actually have to do something with that stake, not just have it.
Right.
Yeah, and I think you know, with the idea of Goxcoin coming, this this proof of burn model is actually a good reinforcement for people who have funds invested in Gox right now.
Can't do it yet, but yeah.
So does anybody else have any questions on the YouTube channel, or I guess they're probably a couple of minutes behind.
I have one.
Yeah, Cameron.
So Adam, you were talking earlier in the LTBcoin forum about you not using SoundCloud. There's a competitor to SoundCloud that you're going to use for
I don't know
audio.
if we're going to use them. Yeah, I'm acting opportunistically right now. We are, you know, we have enough cachet in the Bitcoin space, and there are a lot of people who are trying to get into Bitcoin media right now that, you know, people want to partner with us. So that's really great, and I'm trying to leverage that in every way I can. So I was approached by a competitor of SoundCloud's called Audur. I think that's how you call it. Anyways, that basically is uploadable and then embeddable sound players. And they said, you know, what would it take to get you to switch from SoundCloud, which we've used for the last year, and I've been very happy with. And I said, well, you know, we're making this change, and we're going to be we need to integrate tips into the actual players. We need to integrate, and then I also wanted to integrate an affiliate program into the players itself, so that when you create a piece of content and you upload it, then you put the tip address into it, and any tips that go in go mostly to that address. But content creators would also have the ability to say, okay, any tips that come in through a player that someone embeds on their own website, they can put in their own address and get 20% or 10% or whatever percentage they want of the tip. And so it creates the system where people profit from people being generous on their platform, and it's generosity that as someone receiving the tip, you might not have gotten if they hadn't done that. This is something that we found is that a lot of people will embed our tip information, but a lot of people also leave it off entirely, and some people, you know, maybe 10, 20%, will change the tip information and change it to their own and just won't mention it. So, like, there's not really a way to fight that except by going down this path and actually integrating the tip portion with the content itself. And so they came back to me after about a week and a half and said that they had talked about it and that they were very interested in you know, doing that. And I told them that if they want to come along, I'm happy to drag them into the future with us. So we'll see how that develops.
Yeah, I just posed a question. What would happen if LTBcoin adoption became greater than Bitcoin? I just see that given the access to mining, which is not really mining essentially, it's earned, potentially we could touch a greater market than Bitcoin at this current point just because we're making it that much easier for, I think, users to adopt cryptocurrency. So what would happen if...
LTBcoin is built on top of Bitcoin, so to a certain extent there are some limiting factors here. Bitcoin is currently restricted by 7 transactions per second. I know that those are kind of artificial limitations that can be fixed, but there are scalability issues if we're really successful here. So the good news, again, is that we can use proof of burn, and like I said, the non-inflammatory name for that is token exchange. And we can just say, okay, for every 1 LTB you have here, we're moving into this new chain, and you get 1 over there. It's pretty straightforward. So we have the ability to kind of flex and grow as we need to. But I'm very interested to see what happens with Bitcoin. I don't think it's necessarily LTBcoin that'll be a threat, but I think that there are a lot of these currencies out there that do everything that Bitcoin does and more. And I think that so long as those things are true, that's the first real threat that Bitcoin has faced. Litecoin has never been a threat. When somebody exists to be in second place, they don't cross the finish line first unless something fundamentally breaks in the system, and then they have that opportunity where otherwise they wouldn't. So like if Shaw broke and Script was suddenly, and it was all about script coins, then yeah, Litecoin would win. But that's like the scenario where Litecoin surpasses Bitcoin. But here you're right. There are a lot of different uses, and if people wind up preferring these custom currencies and just using Bitcoin as a highway to get in and out of them, and then holding, like you could hold 25 different custom currencies that all give you an advantage with one particular place that you go or like to hang out.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's very interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of months.
Yeah, I kind of see Bitcoin as being the kind of gold or reserve currency among everything just because it's the most liquidable. So there's a variety of places where you can use it that touch pretty much every market we can think of, and that's growing every day. And I think, I think that LTBcoin has a great avenue to be a backbone for Bitcoin and add more incentive for actually using Bitcoin. So I don't really view it as a competitor. Okay. Any more questions?
Could I just scale it back a little bit? So I find this whole concept fascinating. The idea that you can influence people's behavior with an incentive and just bootstrapping a network in general. Is there any other how much of an impact do you think these style of coins will have in the next 5-10 years or so?
I think that these are going to change everything.
I agree.
Yeah.
Actively
Disengaged asked if this could be a competitor to Liberty.me, which is Jeffrey Tucker's upcoming social network, Liberty-oriented social platform. And actually, not only is this not a competitor to Liberty.me, because it's not really a social network, we're going to have forum and community elements, but it's just different. But I actually had a conversation with he and Michael Megan the other day about creating one of these tokens for Liberty.me to incentivize activity on their forums and to incentivize activity on their community. Because again, like you could do proof of posting and proof of like going to a Liberty event, like anything that you want to incentivize with these things. All you need to do is create a token and then get a community. Because again, like it's not like you're comparing. So I have an analogy that I've been trying to figure out how to properly articulate that basically talks about how you can use this technology to bootstrap a wishing well, and how a wishing well is sort of this fanciful thing where where like it doesn't actually generate any sort of results for you. And so if you stumble across one, even if it's a real magical looking one, you're probably not going to throw in a gold penny that you have in your pocket. That's all you have. So people who have Bitcoin, they're not really compelled to do these things because they have something that's valuable versus something that's arbitrary, and given the two options, you're not going to spend the value in that situation if you're making the right decision. So you could bootstrap a wishing well by putting a token dispenser next to it and say, that distributes 10 quarters a day or something like that. And if you're the first one that finds it, then that means you get 10 free quarters a day, and you can throw 5 into the wishing well, make 5 free wishes, and then save some for a rainy day or whatever. And you come back each day, and over time, as it gets more popular, you reach a point where not everybody can throw in a free token per day because there are more people who want the free token than free tokens that are available per day. So that's how the market essentially gives a value to them. Would it have happened? Would anybody have ever thrown anything in, making a good choice for themselves if that token dispenser hadn't been there as a bootstrapping mechanism to make it so that the first people who found it could do it for free? No, probably not. But at a certain point, the market does find value in it if there's value to be had. So I think that this is true with a wishing well, because the incentives are there. But it's true with all of these other projects so much more, because the community itself, once you have successfully done the bootstrapping part, the community itself is value and value generating just because it exists. So really the question isn't, does community have value? The question is, how do we build valuable community when we don't start with valuable community? And I think that this is the answer.
Yeah, we just got another question. Hey, we already appreciate loading up the Starbucks card to buy coffee, so why not LTBcoin for consuming content?
Yeah, so right now we're not going to charge for content. It's kind of interesting. This network doesn't really rely on anybody paying for stuff. The goal is to achieve as wide a distribution as possible, and the idea that you would charge for content implies that you're only going to give it to the people who are willing to pay you for it. So there are some projects that we're pushing towards that have an exclusive level to them. Incidentally, I'm currently staffing up the Altcoin Observer, which is going to be a newsletter that's going to be available for LTBcoin cheaper than in Bitcoin, and essentially deal with various coins. So if you're interested in getting involved with that, we're putting that crew together over the next 2 weeks, basically. And so I mean, like, there's a lot of projects. There's a lot of projects. If you want to get in, whether it's on the content side, whether it's on the technical side, whether it's on the philosophical side, we really need people on every way. And there isn't a lot of structure right now. That's the thing that I'm really bad at. I'm good at content. I'm good at this meta stuff. I'm good at ideas, but I'm really bad at structure. So looking for people to get involved. LTBcoin.com is the place to sign up. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Definitely. Yeah. So I don't know. I think we should wrap this up.
Yeah, we're getting close to 2 hours here. I agree. This is probably about done. So thanks everybody for coming to this. This was good. I'm gonna do this. We're gonna do this kind of frequently. I have a kind of crazy schedule for the next 3 weeks, so I'm probably gonna do this again next Saturday, and then we'll do it after I get back from all the conferences again. The schedule right now, our 1-year anniversary is April 25th. I plan to have a variety of things relaunched by that point. I'd like to make a number of announcements about partnerships at that point too. The plan is to have the test version of LTBcoin available next week, and I'm not saying exactly what that's going to be called, but it'll basically say, it'll be very obvious that it is test and not the real LTBcoin, so don't worry about somebody offering to sell it to you and not knowing that it's the wrong one.
Yes, it'll say.
I do have that concern that it's really easy to start something like this, and it seems like people do try to take advantage of people, and people don't want to miss out on opportunities, so they kind of act fast without doing their due diligence. So there's going to be lots of time to get LTBcoin. I wouldn't concern yourself too much with it. If you want to make sure you're going to get some, then register at the LTBcoin.com forums and make 5 posts between now and the time we launch. That's the LTBcon. I like that.
There was another good suggestion on the YouTube channel. I'm trying to find who suggested it. I'm trying to remember the name. But I thought it might be a good slogan for the coin. Will work for coin.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because that kind of I think focuses the idea of what really differentiates LTBcoin from everything.
Well, but see, here's the thing, though, is that it differentiates it now, but it's not going to differentiate it in a month. And month, 2 months, there are going to be lots of coins out that are going to try to do this basically same thing. It's going to be easy, and people are going to understand as soon as somebody proves the model. So that's the goal, I think, is to prove the model. And yeah, I mean, once we succeed with this, there are actually lots of potential venues that could happen here. We can through Counterparty, you can do things like dividends, and there's a variety of other things that you can do with it too. One of the other interesting parts is that we're going to create the tokens themselves that represent sponsor slots are going to be tokens themselves that are tradable on the Counterparty network. So you'll bid for a sponsor token with LTBcoin, and then when you have the sponsor token, you'll be able to essentially turn it in and redeem it with the show, and then they'll put you on basically. But the point of that is that it makes it so that we can sell them like a month in advance, and then people can actually trade them. So somebody can buy a sponsor spot with the idea that they don't necessarily have anything that they want to do with it, but they know people, or they think that they know people who comply with the standards on the LTB network or the specific show that they're involved in, because each show or each blog is going to have its own kind of specific standards too, in addition to the network standards. And then resell it for whatever price they can get between the difference they paid for it in LTBcoin and what they can get for it in Bitcoin. And again, because this is a transparent process, that's how it'll start, because the people who want to get who want to buy sponsorships aren't necessarily going to understand how this is working, but people can act opportunistically and essentially be commissioned salespeople working for us, where the commission is the difference between what they pay and what they're able to achieve. So I like that idea. I like the ideas that let us create sets of rules and then let people put themselves into the position, do the job that we need done, and then get compensated based on that. And at the same time, market for us, basically, is what's happening there.
Nice.
Okay. Is that it, guys?
So yeah, so I guess go to ltbcoin.com to really get involved in the community and find out more information on everything that's going on with LTBcoin. We're going to try to, I guess, do this podcast or whatever you want to call it once a week to talk about everything that's going on with LTBcoin, and yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so we'll set this up again for next week. One thing that I'm very conscious of that we're currently missing is a blog for the LTBcoin concept. We're running the Let's Talk Bitcoin, content stuff, but we're not actually doing a meta blog where it's just simple and you can go and learn everything you need to know about it. Right now, you need to go to the forums. I'm hoping to remedy that before I leave for all the conferences I need to get ready for, and basically. But that is high on my priority list. And again, if you're a developer or you want to get involved, we actively need help right now in a variety of capacities. So
essentially like a wiki right now, like an LTBcoin wiki is what is kind of needed.
Well, I don't know if it's a wiki. I think that the forum basically does the job of a wiki. There's a lot of information. It's all under topics. It's not specific, and topics go off topic within them. But I'm not a big fan of wikis. I think a blog is simple, and that's what we're probably going to wind up doing. And again, it'll just be the basic information that you need, and we'll update it as we go.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry, Rob.
I was going to say, sorry, just count me in for anything related to blogs and that sort of thing on LTV. And I agree, a wiki is probably very technical for most folks out there.
Yeah, accessibility is what we're looking for here. Great, thank you, Rob. I appreciate that. Okay, guys. Well, thank you very much for doing this. We're at just a little bit less than 2 hours, so that's better than I thought we were going to be. So we'll set up another one for next week. And then if people are willing to do it while I'm traveling, then I'd be happy if, these Hangouts did happen weekly when I'm not here, too. That'd be great. I'm really actively trying to make myself not the point of failure on this, because that would be bad. So, great. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We'll set this up again for next time, and, I'm looking forward to doing this with you.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Matt.
Hey, nice to meet you, John. You guys take care. Hey, maybe we should end it with Ota Satoshi.
Hey, that's a
you
good
want to
idea.
sing it, Matt?
Hang on a second.
Yeah, let's do it.
That's okay. I'm gonna end the broadcast now. Thanks.
We can do that. Let's see. Real Satoshi Nakamoto, that's the name I love to say. And we don't know much about him, but he came to save the day. When he wrote about the way things are and the way things ought to be, he gave us all the protocol this world had never seen. Our Bitcoin, as you're going into the old blockchain, our Bitcoin, I know Everybody knows your name. Everybody knows. Everybody knows. Everybody knows you're giving some exposure. Everybody knows your name.
John, I love that you're sitting there with guitar ready to belt out.
Dude, he was ready to go, man.
I had to pull it off. I had to pull it off the wall. It hangs on the wall.
That's great. I love it. That's
Thanks,
fantastic. Man. Yeah. All right, guys. See you next time.
Thanks so much, John.
Thanks, guys.
You guys take